All right. Well, welcome to Beginners Academy. We have a Zoom meeting um, every Monday night, and every other meeting we try to have a presentation. Tonight's presentation is FX-4CR Transceiver. So FX-4CR impressions for the Skeeter Hunt contest. So the rig I'll be talking about is the one on the left there, left bottom. And it turned out that I had a good use for it, which was the New Jersey QRP Club Skeeter Hunt, which is an annual event. All right, so we're talking about the FX-4CR. Which is a Chinese radio. I have had a Chinese radios. I had UKIT, similar radios. Let's see. And I had kind of avoided the most recent Chinese radios, but I saw this one on YouTube. Alan Wokey, I think Woke, or I probably got his last name wrong, but he does a YouTube channel on test equipment and such things. And he did a YouTube on an earlier version of this radio, and he rated it a 9.5. And I've got a lot of respect for Alan because he has so much technical savvy. I said, well, there must be something good about it. So I did order it from the bg2fx.com webpage. It was like a pre-order. For me, it was 2 months, and then it was shipped from China, which didn't take very long. BG2FX is the designer and the builder of the radio. So it's pretty much handcrafted by one ham. And he released a big lot of these. So there's a lot of them around now, but he's listing them as currently sold out because he's going to take a little break. So, but if you keep watching the website, he'll be back.
Greg, I sent him an email.
Yeah.
Asking him when they would be back, and he answered me. He said, "Go ahead and order. I am taking orders, but
okay.
But it might be a while. But I'm not publishing that. So he
Okay.
said, go ahead and order and get on the list.
Yeah.
And I'll take him in that order. So he's working on it.
All right. Well, what's nice is he's very responsive to emails and so forth. And so the radio is $550, free shipping. So that's fairly for what it is. That's a reasonable price. That's an excellent price. So we'll hit some details about this radio. It comes in a carrying case that is a keeper. It's not something you would throw away. As you can see, it's on top of a clipboard, so that's about the size of it. It's about the size of an ICOM 705, the case. And you open up the case, you got the radio, a microphone, some cables. So the case affords very good protection for the radio. So I think that's a great bonus that you get a usable case. Here's what's inside the box, so to speak. Of course, the radio, a microphone that looks big compared to the radio, but it's small. A power pole. Jim put no, I'm sorry, it's a power cord. It doesn't have a power pole connector on the radio. It comes with a power cord with a fuse. It has a different type of connector. I think they call it an X60. But anyway,
TX60 or
okay,
XT60 or something like that.
something like that. It's a good connector, but it's not so much a ham standard. And but you can put a power pole on the cord and connect to your chosen power supply. It has a USB cable that plugs into the side. So you
Bill,
don't
and
have
a
to,
speaker, is that a speaker mic or just a microphone?
it's just a microphone. The rig does have a built-in speaker that works very well. That's a good question. I'm trying to show that it essentially fits in the palm of my hand. Um, it turns out that it would be nice if it had little legs where you could tilt it, but I just there's a Bio-NO battery in the background there that I just leaned it against the battery. But there's all kinds of solutions if you want to tilt it. Won't go into those. Here's a close-up. It has buttons that when you press them, they light up. Has a audio frequency volume control, has a little tuning knob. It also has a built-in microphone between the two knobs. And it has a, I think it's a 2.1 inch display. All right. Well, so this is a very small form factor, and it's very ruggedly built, so to speak. If you turn it on, you'll get a display. Even my cell phone camera can't do it justice, but it's a very crisp display. It's not huge, but it's very, I'll just call it crisp and sharp. I was able to read it outside. I wasn't in this weekend, Sunday, so I didn't have any problem in that regard. It is a SDR radio, and it has a spectrum display, which is across the bottom with a waterfall. We'll go into the specs of that. So you have your buttons and you get confirmation of what your mode, frequency, and all that is. And of course, a S meter right there doubles as a power meter. This is actually, it comes with a manual in English. And this is just the specification section of the manual. Covers 80 through 6 meters. It's reduced power on 6 meters. It covers USB, LSB, CW, AM, FM. It has a mode it calls digital, which is essentially upper sideband, I believe. You can change the frequency steps to very fine to very coarse by just tapping the tuning knob. The sensitivities there. I think as far as the receiver that it's awesome. And in particular, the filters are awesome. And as you can see, you have a number of SSB filters. I tried that 1.5 kilohertz, which really cuts back the voice frequency, but it's still very intelligible, and you can get rid of some adjacent station splatter with it. CW filters that go down to 50 hertz. It works very well. On and on. It is from, that could be 0.1. I'm not sure if it's 0.1, but anyway, it's adjustable up to 20 watts. We won't go through every spec here. The voltage range is a little wider than some rigs, and there's some notes about the voltage range. Power consumption on receive is 210 milliamps, which is good. And we'll talk about our performance on the Skeeter Hunt in a moment. A few more the functional characteristics that yeah, I was going to say, I think the spectrum display is like 48 kilohertz. I'd have to confirm that. So it doesn't give you the whole band, but it will give you pretty much the part of the band you're interested in if when you're operating CW, and likewise on phone. It does have a built-in sound card, and also you can get a CAT or CAT connection and audio connection through Bluetooth, which, so there is a wireless connection for doing FT8. All right. Okay. And speak of FT8, you could use it with WSJTX, but there's also a Chinese ham who's made an Android app for FT8. And I just briefly tried it this morning, and you can see on the left there, it's decoding on 15 meters. I did get spotted on 15 meters. I didn't play with it long enough to work somebody. And on the right, it shows a spectrum display, and it even puts the call signs on the spectrum. So, you know, I call them engineering marvels. Well, the radio, I believe, is an engineering marvel as well as this app. So it's awesome. Going to change the topic a little bit. I was operating outdoors for Skeeter Hunt, and this is a picture of the antenna I used. Those three winders, it's a link dipole for 40, 30, and 20. It's one of my favorite antennas. It's from Soda Beams, and one winder has the small coax on it. The other two winders have a half of the dipole each, and it has little alligator clips, and you short the appropriate alligator clips to change bands. Likewise, the little stake back there, I'll show you how I use that, and the telescoping fiberglass antenna is shown there. It's also a Soda Beams product. It's about 22 feet high, which you really wouldn't want anything higher because your inverted V, I use this in an inverted V configuration. It would start to, the angle would go down if you put the a really tall mast on it. All right. Well, on the left, I drive that stake in with a little hammer and bind the pole to the stake with a gear tie, one gear tie. In the picture, I pulled up the first segment of the antenna. Then I put the little center insulator on that and push it on up. And on the right, I pushed it up and pulled the ends out and little stakes on the ground. And I've used that. It's a go-to antenna. I've used it at campsites. I've used it for radar. I actually have another version that covers 80 meters. I've used that on field day. So, okay, so a rig and an antenna and an event was the Skeeter Hunt. It's a QRP event, 4 hours. It was this last Sunday. Tom, I went over to Tom's neighborhood, which they have a little pavilion for residents there. So Tom got me in. And the event was 5 watt CW, 10 for SSB. So I didn't use the 20 watts. I had 33 contacts, 27 on CW and 6 on sideband. And 24 of these contacts were other Skeeters. So the idea of Skeeters is portable stations. You have a Skeeter number and it's in the summer in August. So, well, after a while, I seemed to work most of the stations on CW. So I went on sideband, checking out the rig at 10 watts, and I had no problem working POTA activators on single sideband at 10 watts. So it would definitely work out at 20. And 16 or 15 states and one Canadian. I did hear, I think VE3GRX in Kenora, somebody in Kenora, Ontario. That's for Chris. But anyway, I felt this was a pretty good score for Skeeter Hunt. So
That's Hank.
okay. Yeah. I heard him on and he said he was in Kenora.
Yeah. Hank Drew.
So anyway, I didn't take any pictures. I didn't take any videos, but Tom and I had a good time despite it being 100 degrees. And so it was a good checkout of the radio. It did just what I needed for the Skeeter Hunt. And here are my impressions about the FX-4CR. I really like the supplied carry case. I really like a manual in English. It's well done, folds up and fits in the case with the radio. Obviously, the size and weight of this rig is what is very attractive about it. And also, it's very rugged. Well, I can't say it's military ruggedness, but it's solidly built, let's say. I am very impressed with the speaker. It's loud enough. Uh, um, some rigs are great, but the speaker is not so great. But so the choice of the speaker in this radio is very good. The filters, there's a lot of selections. It's awesome. And it's hard to explain, but the audio, see, it's very clear. uh, and there was very little noise, and I could turn up the volume, and it wasn't like I was raising noise. It just compared to other radios, it just sounded very, perhaps more clear. It impressed me. I haven't used FT8 fully, but it is, the radio is capable of that. And it's also, it will work with the Android app using Bluetooth. And well, I have 5-watt radios. I have 10-watt radios, but I don't have any 20-watt. So this ups the game a little bit.
Hey, Greg, can we ask a question here?
Yes, you can. I've just been charging on.
No,
Go ahead.
No, it's great information. I was just wondering a couple things.
Okay.
One was, I mean, it's clearly a lot of bang for the buck.
Yep.
I just wondered, is there some government or private agency or something that looks at these carefully and makes sure that it doesn't have some kind of spyware or something in it, or something that could be bad?
Well, I'm not aware of anybody that looks at that specifically. There is processing in there. There's quite a computer in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. I haven't heard that being a consideration of radios. So it should meet FCC requirements for spurious emissions.
Yeah, that part I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't expect anything bad there.
But as far as any sinister plans, I really doubt there are any. But no, I don't know. Maybe we could do a search on YouTube and see if somebody's looked at that.
That'd be interesting. Well, the other question that I really wanted to ask you is that you have an Android app, but a lot of us do iPhones instead of Androids. I'm just wondering, is there any type of Apple software?
Well, maybe some of our other folks can answer that. Generally, the logging software and other software is available on both.
Right.
As far as an FT8 app, I don't know if it's available for an iPhone. I kind of don't think so. So does anybody else have a comment about that? So you're not totally out of luck with iPhones and Apple computers, but the selection does seem to be smaller
Right.
of software.
Yeah, I mean, there pros and cons to that. You know, I think the software gets a lot more scrutiny, perhaps, maybe not
Yeah.
by individual people like beta testers, but by professional, you know, people that work.
Right.
And then of course, you know, Apple gets their cut on everything. So there's, you know, your negative side, I guess. But
Yeah.
um, I just
Uh,
worry about these things. It's my job to worry about these
Right.
things. And there's a lot of stuff out on the internet that you can read. You don't have to have my job to read about these
Right.
things.
Yeah.
So makes me a little nervous especially when you start talking about digital stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It starts making me a little bit nervous.
Yeah. Well, there are, traditionally, um, uh, amateur radio kind of, over the years, it became a Japanese thing.
Right. Yeah.
And in the last few years, the choices from China are really coming on. Now, I guess this is an example, and so the G90 is also a great example of a Chinese radio. So, yeah.
I just, you know, when you Bluetooth into something, your phone's talking to something else, you know, and there's a possibility for bad things to happen.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you know Chris Cruz at the base. You may not know him.
I don't think so.
I'll ask him.
Okay.
He's a real tech guy. He's got answers
Yeah.
to anything.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there are a lot of people in the government that they're agencies that look at some of these things and test them, and so you know, it's like,
well,
for a while you couldn't, you know, there were a lot of things we couldn't buy because we knew there was problems with them.
Well,
buyer beware.
Interesting. Yeah, it is. So never thought about that angle for ham radio, but these devices are getting so sophisticated. It's a good point.
Yeah.
Okay.
It might be a great idea to just have like what do they call those burner phone that doesn't have any real personal information or anything.
Well,
like
you could, yeah.
And use it for things like this. I think that's what I'd do.
Yeah.
All right. I've hijacked your meeting. I'll be quiet.
This is good. Maybe that's why they made it so affordable to sucker us in. So, but yeah, I think the number one comment that you'll see on the YouTube videos about this radio is that it's a lot of power in a small package, and the top of the case gets hot. And so, you know, I think the designer realizes that it's hotter than most radios get. So we'll have to see how these hold up. You know, it's a relatively new item, but
could you put a heat sink on the top? Is there any buttons?
no, well, somebody will come up with a heat sink for the top.
That's exactly what I was going to ask.
Are there any buttons up there? Any buttons on top?
No.
So heat sink would be easy.
Yeah, well, when you add all that stuff, you get a bigger radio.
How about a little heat sink?
Yeah, well, if it works, it's okay if it gets hot, but if they start burning up, then maybe we'll have to. Yeah, it's a choice. I know Elecraft radios, there's add-on heat sinks and all that. So yeah, that's coming.
Fred,
I,
does it get hot even when you're running only 5 watts?
it's hot to the touch. Yeah. Yeah. Because I was running 5-watt CW. Now it wasn't going to burn me or anything, but yeah. Now actually I have an Elecraft 100-watt amplifier, which doesn't, well, there's no fan in this radio. I have an Elecraft amplifier that has a heat sink instead of a fan. And if you put your hand on top of that heat sink, when you're running 100-watt steady, it's similar. So I think radios that don't have a fan, they're going to be warm. So we'll see how this plays out. I'm not that concerned about it as long as the radio doesn't get damaged, and so we'll see how it goes. But personally, well, in the manual it says to run 5 watts for FT8 instead of 20. So for my applications, you know, I'm not going to run it. Might not be the best radio for a 24-hour field day, but somebody will have to try it. So
Does it have internal batteries?
it does not.
Okay.
And
I
as
just
we'll
like
get,
I was thinking maybe it's the battery that's getting hot.
no,
It doesn't have one. Okay.
no. Okay. The radio is a little box. You can use it without tilting the box, but it would be handy. And you can come up with all kinds of ways to tilt it. I just tilted it. Tom suggested that I tilt it on the battery, and that was good enough. This really is a nit, but it seemed like when I changed bands that it changed. It was, I don't know. It didn't carry over my power to the, when I went from 20 to 40, it was on 20 watts. So I had to change it. So I haven't had enough experience with it, but I think there's little things like that obviously that could be changed in the firmware very easily. To me, I don't think this is going to happen, but it would be nice if the spectrum scope could be maybe expanded, or or in other words, on the ICOM 705, you can change the range of the spectrum scope. On this radio, it's fixed, and that's probably would get very complicated to change it, but that would be nice, but it's not. It's just a nit. All right. Well, my summary on this radio is it's a solid rig with SDR features because it is SDR. It's full featured in a small package. It can do 20 watts if you like. I think if you're operating portable on SSB, usually go with at least 10, and 20 would be even better. And it will do 20. It does have the built-in sound card and Bluetooth. It's priced less than the ICOM 705 and the Elecraft KX2, but it's priced more than the G90, which has a tuner. This radio has no tuner, but the antennas I use, generally, I don't use a tuner. Like the link dipole, I just change the jumpers to change bands. And It does have 6 meters, but no 2 or 70 centimeters. And you, BG2FX, the designer and manufacturer, is very responsive. Now, in the big picture, you can say there's one guy designing and building this radio, and that's good because he really has his act together. He's responsive, but it could be bad if he moves on to something else. So
If he croaks,
if he croaks, frankly, but but yeah. So you don't have a big company supporting this. So this is kind of a craft product that's very well done. And there seems to be a pretty big demand for it. So there's pros and cons.
hey, Greg, I want
Yes.
to ask you a question.
All
So
right.
about I mean, I know you have your antennas. You know exactly how to build them and everything, so they're pristine. What kind of SWR do you get on the different bands as you switch your clips out? Have you checked it out to see about
Yeah,
where it is?
it's very low. It's like 1.2 to
Oh, that's fantastic.
1.5. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Yeah, that soda beams, well, there's not particular magic about that. You can build your own link dipole that should have similar performance, but
Right.
they cut it right.
Okay.
And so, but good question. I also use a magnetic loop, and I can operate a lot from 40 to 10 meters. And I can get the SWR down. That's just part of the process. Well, there's no tuner in the radio, but my hand is a tuner, so to speak. So by adjusting the capacitor, you can get the SWR to an acceptable level with a magnetic loop. All right. So my plans for the radio, did I need yet another radio? No, but this would be a great travel radio if I go out to California or camping. I think it pairs up nicely with the Alex loop at 20 watts. You know, I'd rate the link dipole better than the Alex loop. Oh, that's a subject for another discussion, but nevertheless, it doesn't, the Alex loop, as far as I know, will handle 20 watts. And so it's just a little bit of insurance there. And I do radar rally, which is portable operating on steroids. And it's a little lighter. So than the ICOM 705. So every little bit helps. So at this point, I'll entertain comments and questions about the little radio.
What's the current draw compared to the 705? If it's getting hot, you're wasting some energy there, obviously.
Well, it's I think the current draw is, I'd have to look up the 705, but it's on receive, it's in the same neighborhood, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the bulk of the time you are receiving usually.
Yes. I used a 3 amp hour Bioenno lithium iron phosphate battery for 4 hours, and well, it got down to about 12.5 volts. So I didn't exhaust it. I probably could get along with an even smaller battery if I can find one. So that's a good question. I don't know that it's wasting power so much. It's just, it is so small, the heat has to go somewhere.
Oh yeah, I guess smaller form factors can be
Yeah.
proportionally warmer
Yeah.
than.
It's more power in a small package. So this is just the thing people have noticed. So it's something people are watching.
So
It obviously doesn't blow up. It didn't for my activity.
the interesting question for me, being an engineer, is what is the efficiency? You know, how many watts goes out that antenna wire compared to how many watts of energy out of the battery you're using? So, and how does that compare to one of these big, you know, desktop radios?
Actually, it's a whole lot. Well, I don't have an efficiency number. Usually, I know tube radios are like 50% efficient, but
Yeah.
it has, well, I'll say this. It has a very low receive. Well, when you consider what it's doing and all the features, it has a very low receive power consumption. And the tabletop radios, you can turn those down to 5 watts and they'll still use 8 amps because they're not very efficient. They need they use a bias current. I don't know if the 857 is that way. But for example, I used the ICOM 7100 at 5 watts for field day, and it still drew 7 or 8 amps. So it wasn't very efficient. Do you have a comment on that, Chris?
I've never done load checks, and I
Yeah.
should. It wouldn't be that hard to do. I should.
Yeah. Yeah.
If Greg, if it draws 3.3 amps on transmit, I assume that's 20 watts, and you figure 12 volts, that comes out to 56% efficient. So that's not too bad. That's not too bad.
Well,
it's not bad at all, really.
The transmit draw is it, you know, 20 watts. Actually, it's, I need to do some checking, Carrie, but it's on par with the other QRP radios, which somebody might know how much a G90 draws. And it's probably going to be a little less than 4 amps, probably. So I don't know that it's more efficient than tabletop radios, and it has similar efficiency to other low power portable radios. So
It'll be a great hand warmer in the wintertime when it's really cold.
good point, especially for Chris.
There you go.
Yeah,
Put in my hat.
Well, I'm going to stop the share so we can see our audience here. All right. Well, I guess the good news is there are a lot of choices in amateur radio, and the engineering is just getting better and better. As you can see, they took what the KX2 did or the KX3 and put it in a smaller package. Actually the KX2 doesn't have a spectrum scope. So I'm very impressed. You know, we were all used to Japanese radios, and which are pretty expensive, but now we have some alternatives that aren't so expensive. So
Do any of these Chinese ones do VHF, UHF?
I don't know. Jim, do you know of a Chinese radio that does all of it?
Well, the 6100 does 6 meters. That's all.
Yeah,
The G90 is only 1/6, is actually it's 80 through 10,
yeah,
and the 5105 does 6 meters. That's Chinese.
yeah.
I had a Xiegu 108 when they first came out. I think it was just a 160 through 10. I don't recall any right offhand.
Yeah. Well, so now we need to get an all band, all mode radio
Yeah.
in the palm of your hand. So there's still a ways to go. Oh, all right. Well, what I didn't talk much about is it was a fun event. I did speak to it, Skeeter Hunt, and in the QRP world, there are similar events. One's called Flight of the Bumblebees. Then there's Skeeter Hunt. Then there's Peanut Powered Sprint. And the neat thing is what you can do with 5 watts. You can work all over the country at 5 watts, and you know, a lot of the signals, you know, I was giving out 5 9s, 5 7s, and 5 5s. A few of them I had trouble with. I couldn't hear my friend in Colorado. But when you think about it, our antenna was kind of broadside to north and it not west. So Colorado was probably off the end, although we did work Arizona and Texas. So, and Canada. So
So you talk to Hank or do CW with?
I just heard him as I was tuning around.
Oh, okay. You didn't work
Yeah.
him though, eh?
I didn't work him. But
And what band was that on? Do you recall?
20 meters.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And in fact, well, we got on 40 meters and we were working a ham who was 85 years old and doing CW, and he would have chatted for an hour or two if we had that much time. Do you have any comments about our outing, Tom?
Yeah, the audio on here. I think you've covered everything. You were the operator. I just kind of watched your operation and did some logging for you and took care of Susie in between times, I guess. But
Right.
yeah. But no, the rig, I was very impressed by the little rig. The audio quality for the size of the rig and the speaker, as Greg says, was very clear. It's plenty loud, usually, although it did have a few CW signals that were 5.1, 5.2 maybe on a good moment. But I was copying it. It was directed the other direction, and thankfully Greg had a big fan blowing on us, so it was making noise. I think in a quieter environment, I've had less trouble copying. But Greg was copying well. I was copying a little bit with him too. We did work a lot of different stations, a lot of stations in Pennsylvania. We got New York a number of times, New Jersey several times, Wisconsin, Missouri was very popular. We got good reports. I'd say 5.5 to 5.9 reports. Nobody gave us, well, one gave us a 5.2, but
Yeah.
most of them were 5.5 and 5.7. So with the link dipole, which is very easy to change bands on, it's efficient antenna, low SWR. You don't need a tuner with it. It makes a good combination. And I think, as Greg says, the Alex loop with that rig will make a wonderful portable travel rig because it just takes no space at all. So it's a neat rig. That's it. I
All right.
it's neat. Good rig.
It's neat. Yeah.
Yeah.
You didn't show us the microphone.
Yeah, he
Yeah, I
did.
You did? I didn't see it.
Yeah, he showed you.
I missed
But
it.
so it's
Okay.
so small, Jim. It's so small you can miss it if you blink.
Yeah.
I know, that was so cute, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, well, I could go back, but it looks big compared to the rig, but it's small. It's a little bigger than my thumb, I think. And there is a built-in microphone, which I didn't use. Of course, a new radio, I really didn't have a lot of experience with it. And at first I was looking for things, and then after a few minutes, everything was good. The side tone is not real loud, uh, but that wasn't a problem.
Hey,
So
Greg,
yes,
about the side tone, did you check the manual to see if that's adjustable?
I haven't seen anything in the manual about it.
Really?
No,
It is kind of low.
I
down.
need,
Yeah.
yeah, I need to check again. So maybe it may be that it hasn't been used by that. I need further investigation to make sure I'm not overlooking something. Yeah. Um, and if not, the builder's been pretty. The earlier versions of this did have some problems. And a lot of those have been taken care in the newest firmware. You can upgrade the firmware. And also the firmware is open source. Actually, Carrie, we can get that firmware and we can have it analyzed. It's not 100%, but nevertheless, the functionality could be extended through the open source firmware. So a lot of smart people, a lot of smart hams. This is just another example.
That's a nice radio. I
Yeah.
haven't bought one. I
Yeah.
haven't bought a transceiver yet.
Yeah.
but
I
that's looking nice.
actually I'm not particularly recommending it as a first radio. It's very new. Um uh, um most times we recommend a 100-watt radio for new hams, although the G90 is kind of breaking that rule, and it's a 20-watt radio. So um I don't know anything wrong with this radio, but I haven't been promoting it as a first radio necessarily. But as a ham, you are the chief engineer of your station, and you can pretty much do anything you want. That as long as your
Money permitted.
as long as your wife is
Yeah. I was gonna get one
approves
this
or she
weekend, but
doesn't know, whichever the one.
I was going to get one this weekend. I got a Weber grill instead.
You got what instead?
A Weber.
A Weber grill, but I had a really good
Okay.
steak tonight.
Yeah.
How much is that radio, Greg? I know you mentioned it, I forgot.
$550 US.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'd
It's
agree
cheap.
with Rick. The thing that would kind of slow me down with that radio is the fact that it's one guy. And, if something does go wrong, he's been responsive to emails apparently.
Yeah.
But if something really blows up major, is he going to really back you up, or have you just bought yourself a little paperweight?
Well, right now, there's some people that did have problems, and he sent them either has 3 boards in it. I think he's either sent them a replacement board or another radio. But the question is, will that still be that way 5 or 10 years from now? Well, we don't know. Because Tom and I have used radios that were in a way similar a number of years ago called UKITs, and the support, you can't buy a UKIT now new, and
There was no support.
and
You couldn't even
there's-
find a schematic hardly.
yeah, so yeah, um but things move on, and it may be that 10 years from now that Chinese radios has just got the whole market, but not yet. And Kerry, there are some US made radios. Flex Radio is US design and built, and also Elecraft. Now they might have a few components that come from other countries, but they are home. Well, they started out small, and those are pretty big outfits now. Flex and Elecraft, and I may be overlooking some. Well, I want to thank everyone for their attention and interest. There are a lot of choices for radios and antennas, and that's one thing that makes amateur radio an interesting hobby. So we'll wind up this session, and we post these on YouTube so people can watch them at their convenience.
Yeah.